Oh, hey everyone, and welcome to the increasingly inaccurately called July livestream. August 8th today. This is Andreas Antonopoulos, as you can see on your screen. Although I'm hiding behind that screen because today is a audio-only livestream. Let's first see if we've got a good audio setup. I've been traveling lately, and so I don't really have a studio set up. Right now we're doing things kind of the old-fashioned way, which means I threw something together in the last 15 minutes with whatever gear I could find sitting around. So let me know in the chat. Let me know how things are going. Audio sounds great. Really? I have my doubts about that. I mean, I wouldn't say great, but it's okay. It's probably okay. That's promising. That's promising. So, hey, what have you all been up to? What have you all been up to? I finished writing a book. What? Yeah, I finished writing a book. So, just about a week ago, I delivered the final manuscript of Mastering the Lightning Network to the publisher, O'Reilly Media. And Lalo Stockton and Renee Picard and I finished basically the first draft, and it's done. It's in the bag. Well, it's out of the bag. It can't be put back into the bag because it's no longer in the bag. It's out of the bag. And yeah, I'm really excited about that, mostly because it's done. And right now I'm just feeling a huge amount of relief that it's done. And I guess over the next couple of weeks, I'm going to start feeling happy about it because I think it's a pretty good book. And it's exactly the kind of book I wish I had to read when I first started exploring the Lightning Network. And I'm excited. So if you want to read it, by the way, you can read it online already. It's not properly copy edited. Yeah, oh, there it is in the chat. github.com/lnbook/lnbook. The manuscript is entirely online. It's going to get better before it gets published because some actual professional copy editors and proofreaders and illustrators and designers are going to go over it. Now, the paper version, the actual final published edition, the ebook and everything else will come out in December, just in time for Christmas. It's going to take the next 2.5 months to go through a proper tech review and copy edit and proofread and produce a really quality book. But as with any open source book, as with my previous open source books, this is now available because it was available from the first day we were writing it. And yes, you can pre-order copies. You can pre-order copies on Amazon. And I would appreciate that, sure. I mean, if you want to, Amazon.com is the address if you didn't know it. And then over there, you can pre-order a copy that will make the weird bald man who laughs in a funny way and wears a cowboy hat even though he's not a cowboy. Maybe he'll go a bit further on his penis rocket next time he wants to go to the moon. But in the meantime, you can buy it there. You can also buy it on the O'Reilly website, I believe. You can pre-order it directly from the publisher. And I'm going to have an ebook available about a year from now on my own website. So I'm not going to be selling it directly until the license is open. Right now, it's under a Creative Commons attribution non-commercial, non-derivative license, which means that we can't yet start the voluntary translations and all of the other things But about a year from now, in December 22, we will hopefully switch the license to an open Creative Commons share alike. And at that point, we'll start getting translations done, and we'll also have an open edition ebook. So I'm looking forward to this. I really, it was a long and rather difficult slog writing this book because a global plague happened and a few other little things. And so, as always, life intervenes. But I had a really good collaboration with my two co-authors, and I'm really happy with the result. I think it's a book that anyone can read and enjoy the first 3 chapters. Technically inclined people will get through the first 5 chapters and learn a lot. And those of you who have a bit more of a heavy technical experience and are more inclined towards the more computer sciencey things will appreciate the second part of the book, which is the final, 7 chapters, which is very technical and gives you a really in-depth understanding of the Lightning Network. And I would say I know that because I learned the really in-depth understanding of the Lightning Network by writing this book. So that was my secret plan. My secret plan was to learn the really in-depth detail of the Lightning Network by writing a book to teach everybody else. So and my co-authors really helped with that because obviously they're much more technical than I am and did a fantastic job. We all had a great collaboration. Anyway, so that's the good news from my end. How about you? Any things you managed to get done since we last spoke? It's been about a month and a half. Excellent. I'm glad you said so. Yes, I mean, that sounds great. And really, I think, yes, and yellow will look lovely on you. So I'm glad you got it in that color. Yeah? Oh, really? Is that what you want? How was the food there? Excellent. Wonderful. So let's, why don't we jump into some questions? Very good. I think everybody's ready now. Let's jump into some questions. Here's our first question. Anonymous asks, how, technically speaking, do Bitcoin nodes find each other on the internet? Is there any sort of centralized registry with IP addresses of Bitcoin nodes? Anonymous, this is a great question. And I'd like to also say that the answer I'm going to give you to this question also applies to the Lightning Network, also applies to, honestly, pretty much any peer-to-peer network. This stuff is not new. It wasn't done for the first time with Bitcoin. It was done a long time ago with peer-to-peer networks, going back to, even the pre-Napster days. But certainly something we see in every single blockchain-related peer-to-peer network. We also see it with things like BitTorrent and things like that. So how does a peer-to-peer network find each other? Well, there's a decentralized registry of IP addresses of Bitcoin nodes. And that decentralized registry is the Bitcoin network itself. So one of the terms we use for these types of peer-to-peer networks is we say that they have a gossip protocol, which means that the nodes talk about each other and they gossip information about the network. And one of the things they gossip about is all of the other nodes that they know. So if you connect to my Bitcoin node with your Bitcoin node, one of the things our nodes will talk about is what other Bitcoin nodes we know about. And we only talk about the ones that have behaved well in the past, that we know have given us good blocks and transactions. And we exchange information with each other about these other Bitcoin nodes, and we tell each other, oh yeah, I saw this Bitcoin node at this Bitcoin address, at this IP address or this IPv6 address. or I saw a Bitcoin node on this Tor onion address, and do you know about this one? So that's the kind of information we'll gossip. And Lightning nodes gossip about other Lightning nodes, and Ethereum nodes gossip about Ethereum nodes. So really, once you're connected to one node on the Bitcoin network, you're going to find out about many others, and then you can connect to them and find out a bit about even more Bitcoin nodes. And you can essentially keep doing that and find out about most, if not all, of the Bitcoin nodes that are currently online through that process. Now, if you think about it for a second, you'll probably ask, okay, hang on a second. If I connect to a Bitcoin node, I can find out about all of the other Bitcoin nodes that are known. But how do I find the first Bitcoin node to connect to? And this is called bootstrapping. And again, it's something that all peer-to-peer networks do in a variety of different ways. One way is to have a few Bitcoin nodes hard-coded into the software. So for example, when you run your Bitcoin node software, maybe it's got a list of 5 nodes that are well known, their IP addresses that have been running for a very long time, that we know are probably going to still be online. And those are the first ones you connect to. And once you connect to any one of those, you can ask it about other Bitcoin nodes it knows, and then build the rest of the list yourself. But hard coding is also not particularly safe, because if you were somehow able to take down those 5 nodes, that would be a problem. So another way we do this is with DNS. So Lightning and the Bitcoin network use DNS seed nodes, which are basically domain name lists that will give you, if you ask them, they're basically fake domains that have a domain name service that can tell you about dozens of other Bitcoin nodes that you can connect to. So you'll connect to one of these seeds, and from there you'll find out about the rest of the network. And because the domain name system itself is distributed and dynamically updated, you can make that kind of bootstrapping much more resilient, and then you don't depend on any specific node. All right, that's I think a good answer for that question. Let me check in the chat, see how you're doing while we pull up another question. All right, let's see what we've got next. Oh dear. Give me a question. Give me a second. It appears perhaps that I have cropped the top of the question screen a tiny bit too aggressively. Whoop-de-doo. There we go. How that's good. That's a bit better. Can you see that now? La-di-da. This is live editing, people. There are things moving on your screen. Don't worry, everything's under control. Nothing's under control. There we go. Okay, that's a bit better, I think. So pretend all of that didn't happen. Our next question is from the Swiss Road to Crypto. A miner does not get their block reward until 100 blocks have been mined. Is this checked by the nodes? Is this part of the consensus rules? That's a great question. So what the Swiss Road to Crypto is talking about here is that when a miner gets a Coinbase reward, when they successfully mine a block and that block is included in the blockchain, the first transaction in that block is going to be the Coinbase transaction. And that transaction is going to pay the miner at current rates 6.25 Bitcoin, which is the current block subsidy, plus whatever transaction fees are being collected, and that total amount is going to be paid out to the Bitcoin address of a miner. It's a transaction like any other, except for the fact that it doesn't have any inputs. So it only has outputs. It creates this Bitcoin from the block itself. But its output looks like any other. It has a Bitcoin address or script in it, and it pays the 6.25 Bitcoin to that Bitcoin address. Now, there's a rule here that the miner can't spend that money for 100 blocks. And that means that they can't create another transaction that says, spend this Bitcoin, here's my digital signature, and send it wherever. And so the simple answer to that question is, this is part of the consensus rules, meaning that if a miner were to create a transaction that attempted to spend the coin base of a block, and the coin base of that block was only, let's say, 96 blocks in the past, that transaction would be invalid. When they tried to propagate that transaction across the Bitcoin network, none of the nodes would propagate it because they would all try to verify it, see that the coin base had not aged enough, and say, no, this is invalid. This transaction is currently invalid. And even if that transaction was somehow to get to a miner, the miner wouldn't include it in a block because it's an invalid transaction. And if a miner included their own transaction into a block for some stupid reason, then that would make the entire block that they mined invalid, which would then cost them the entire reward. So they wouldn't be able to propagate the block either. So it is one of the consensus rules, and it's checked by every node, including all of the mining nodes, but also every other node that sees it. Now, that exact same transaction could simply be broadcast again 4 blocks later, let's say, and at that point it would be valid because the Coinbase will have aged enough, will be 100 blocks deep, and then it can be spent. Since transactions don't really expire and they don't really have a time or date in them, you can just take the same one that previously was invalid and just rebroadcast it after 100 blocks have elapsed, and then it's valid again. Great, that was a really good question. Now, if you want to ask a question, please visit the Slido and submit your question there. We've got the Slido code, which you keep seeing at the top of the page, which is live July QA. And if you go there and you notice that there's a lot of questions, it might be strategically smart for you to vote on one of the existing questions that's close enough to what you want to ask, if you can find one. Because it's unlikely we'll get enough votes on a new question at this point. Now, and as a reminder, if you want to get early access to ask a question, that's one of the little perks of supporting my work on Patreon or with a YouTube membership. Patrons get the longest time to ask questions on Slido. YouTube members get a bit of a head start too. And then everybody else gets it on the live stream. Got 200 people on the live stream so far. Where is everybody? Must be too hot where you all are. Must be too hot on the internet. And so, oh wait, no, we have some people in Australia telling me right now it's too cold. It's too cold in Australia. So they couldn't join today. So only 200 people. That means that you are the chosen ones, really. You chose yourself, of course, but good choice. Oh, look, my window is once again the wrong size. Oh dear, what is happening here? Andreas, were you writing a book instead of setting up a broadcasting system? There we go. That's better. Giovanni asks, what are your thoughts on Lightning centralization? Do you think it will grow into a more centralized or decentralized network? Could it lead to privacy problems or denial of service, and in what measure? All right, let's start with what is Lightning. So the Lightning Network is a layer 2 network that is basically a clever way of using the Bitcoin protocol that makes Bitcoin very, very fast, private, cheap, and just as secure as before. So with a Lightning Network, you can do a transaction in a matter of seconds. It's fully, finally, and completely settled in a matter of seconds. And also quite private, because it's a true peer-to-peer network and nobody else sees that transaction other than your peer. And the fees are in the order of a couple hundred Satoshis for a transaction, which means that you can do micropayments on the Lightning Network. And I just finished writing a book on this with my two co-authors called Mastering the Lightning Network, and it was a lot of fun. So let's talk about centralization. Interestingly enough, there are some measures of centralization that we can apply from a mathematical perspective by analyzing the connectivity, the graph of the Lightning Network. Because we can discover the nodes and the channels that they have between them, at least the publicly announced channels that and publicly announced nodes, we can measure the degree of centralization on the Lightning Network. So if we do that, we'll see two interesting things. It's first of all, it's not particularly centralized already. We're talking about a network with more than 10,000 nodes that have more than 50,000 channels between them. So it's not a particularly centralized node. The average centralized network. The average node has about 8 channels today. And the other thing that's really interesting is that over time it's getting less centralized. And I think it's going to get even less centralized in the future. And one of the reasons for that is a mechanism for using the Lightning Network called multipath payments. Now, one of the reasons that the Lightning Network gets centralized is because if you want to send a payment, you had to have a channel with enough capacity to transmit that payment, and you had to have channels with enough capacity all the way connecting you to the recipient. So if you want to send a payment from A to B, you have to be able to connect through a series of channels, the point A to point B, and every one of those channels needs to have enough liquidity. So obviously, if you think about it for a second, that means that if you make bigger channels, you'll be able to route more payments, and the types of nodes that can make bigger channels and maintain them have more money to stake in the Lightning Network, and so that can lead to centralization. Well, with multipath payments, you don't need to have a channel big enough to send the entire payments. You can actually have, instead of one big channel, you can have 10 small ones, and you can split the payment over 5 or 6 of those channels, for example, and then the payment can follow 5 or 6 different paths to reach the destination, and none of those paths need to have enough liquidity for the whole payment, just each one of the parts. Well, in that case, obviously, as you can see, even nodes with just a few channels and just a few small channels can not only send payments and receive payments, they can also route payments for others effectively by aggregating their channels. Maybe they're only routing a small part of the payment over their channels, but still they're helping. So I think the Lightning Network is going to get more decentralized over time. And I think parts of the Lightning Network will be more centralized, parts will be more decentralized. There will be elements of the Lightning Network where centralization is a smart and efficient way to do things. Like if, for example, I wanted to set up Lightning channels to be able to quickly shift liquidity, Bitcoin liquidity, between 5 or 6 large exchanges or merchants. If I wanted to connect, I don't know, Coinbase, Kraken, Binance together and connect them to some big merchants, well, it makes sense to put some really big channels between them and create a fairly tightly connected network so we can efficiently and quickly move large payments between those providers. They serve a lot of people. But that doesn't mean that your node needs to use those central nodes to get anywhere. And you can still have other parts of the Lightning Network that are much more like a mesh. And so I think we'll see different topologies and different scales arrive there. Finally, the last part of your question, Giovanni, could it lead to more privacy problems or denial of service, and in what measure? The Lightning Network becoming centralized doesn't lead necessarily to more privacy problems. In fact, central nodes don't have any insight into where the payments are coming from or where they're going, unless they're the endpoint of the payment, in which case they'll know where the payment is going. If you send a payment from A to B and it crosses 5 other nodes, let's say, none of the intermediate nodes knows where it came from or where it's going. All they know is the immediately previous and the immediately next node. And this is because we use a mechanism called onion routing. So that's a very interesting part of the Lightning Network, and it's explained in detail in, I believe it was chapter 10 or 11 of the book. And you could read about that too. So privacy is strong. In fact, the bigger the Lightning Network gets, the better the privacy gets. And for denial of service, yeah, you could theoretically take out one of these nodes that have a lot of channels through an attack, and then that would cause some connectivity problems in that part of the network. But it's not centralized enough for that to have any meaningful impact in the overall connectivity of the network. And so you can do another mathematical analysis where you say how many and which nodes do you need to remove from the network in order to cause the network to fragment or make it difficult to route. And turns out that measure of centralization is also decreasing over time. And the more you have multipath payments among lots of small decentralized nodes, the less effective a denial of service attack is. And take out a big node. Sure, you're going to disrupt services on that big node, but everybody else will simply route around it. And that's an interesting property. Effectively, that's how the internet works. Even the centralized ISP-based internet has that capability. All right, let's go back to the chat. I might not answer a lot of questions today. We might answer just a few and answer them well. And again, if you want to ask a question, please do so on the Slido. We rely on the voting of the questions to make sure that when we answer a question, it's a question that really a lot of people want answered, and we really give our focus to those questions. I also use my position as benevolent dictator of this live stream to decide what kind of questions I want to answer, and which ones I think are going to also make good videos, quite honestly, and that lots of people who maybe are not on the live stream would like to hear about. Okay, let's see what else. And whoopsie. Okay, you need to ask smaller questions, people, because I can't make this font any smaller. No, I'm just kidding. It's fine. Anonymous asks, every month I pay my half of the rent to my partner in Bitcoin, around 400 euros. 1, would it make sense to open a big Lightning Network channel between us, or should we stick to on-chain for now? Can you describe the different ways for refilling this channel? It's a great question. And one of the things that you might consider with the Lightning Network is that you will have to pay an on-chain fee to open a channel. You have to make one on-chain transaction to open a Lightning Network channel. And then you have to pay another on-chain transaction to close a Lightning Network channel. So if you always just send money in one direction, then a channel will effectively become unbalanced. All of the money will move to the other side. So let's say you opened a 400 euro sized channel to your partner, and then you send 400 euros across that channel, and now you have 0 on your end and there's 400 euro on your partner's end. Well, I mean, all they can do with that is send it back to you, or if you have other channels, they can route it somewhere else through you to pay someone else. But if they're not paying you or paying anybody else, then there's not much they can do. They'd have to close that channel if they wanted to do anything with it. If you opened a big channel, then you could basically send rent every month, and if the channel was, 10 times the size of your monthly rent, then it would start out with 10 times on one side, 4,000 euros on your end, 0 on the other, and then 3,600 euros on your end and 400 on the other, etc. And that way you could move payments back and forth with your partner. You could have other routing capabilities. That may make more sense. You can't refill a channel. You can only close it and reopen it. You can rebalance it by sending payments through other channels and routing them around the network, for example, but you can't effectively refill a channel. However, I'd like to suggest one more thing. The first question you ask is, would it make sense to open a big Lightning Network channel between us, or should we stick to an on-chain transaction for now? And I would suggest that actually almost every time you're doing a on-chain transaction, if you think you might ever want to do another transaction, either in that direction or in the opposite direction with that person, you should, instead of doing an on-chain transaction, if they'll take Lightning, you should use the on-chain transaction opportunity to open a channel and push the Lightning payment. Meaning that if you have to pay someone 400 euro, if you open an on-chain transaction to open a channel and send that 400 euro, now they can send part or all of that back to you or route it through you without making another on-chain transaction. For example, if you wanted to buy something from my shop and I accept both on-chain Bitcoin and Lightning payments, well, if you're going to buy a t-shirt and you want to, you're willing to pay an on-chain fee, instead of paying an on-chain fee to buy the t-shirt, pay an on-chain fee to open a channel to my node, and then use Lightning to buy the t-shirt, and now you have the t-shirt, which you would have anyway. You've spent the fee, which you would have done anyway. But you also have a channel, and not just that, but you've moved 25 euro, let's say, of that channel to my end, so now you have inbound liquidity that can move back to you for a future payment. So one of the things we need to think about is, how can we use every on-chain transaction as an opportunity to open a channel or close a channel or rebalance our channels instead of just doing an on-chain payment? If you're going to pay the fee anyway, make the most of it. So maybe paying rent every month is the kind of event where Lightning doesn't make sense if you don't have any other channels or you're not going to be doing any other transactions. But for many other things, it would make sense to do a channel instead. Oh, I notice Tofu Dog is asking on the chat, how much more content is there if you become a member to this channel? And I want to just kind of describe my overall philosophy here, which is I don't make content exclusively for anyone. Exclusivity, which sounds like a fancy and good thing, is against my vocabulary. I do inclusivity. So if I make something, I give it to everyone. And in most cases, I give it to everyone open source and for free. And that's part of what you get. So think of it this way. If you support my work, if you subscribe or sign up as a member or join my Patreon, it's not because you're going to get something. You already got it. I mean, you got it for free. It's good. You don't need to do anything. And I really appreciate your support. One of the ways you can think about it is your support will let me make more of this for the future, which I'm still going to give away. And maybe you can help someone else get this content by helping me produce it. And, effectively what this does really is it's not supporting me as much as it's supporting my team. Supporting my team to make me look good by making great content and repackaging it and making it available in more ways and more languages to reach more people around the world. Very good. Zekas asks, as a Bitcoin inheritance system, can you set UTXOs to be transferable by a public key, private key? I don't know what PK means. I'm assuming private key. Transferable by a private key owned by you anytime, but also by another private key only after block X. You could roll them while alive, and only after you die they can be moved. Zekas, yes, theoretically. In fact, practically, you could create a script using a multi-signature and an if statement and a time lock to do this. I would certainly recommend you don't. And the reason I would recommend you don't, and the reason I wouldn't do this, is complicated, but it basically boils down to this. Among you and your family, you are the Bitcoin expert. If something happens to you, among other things, their Bitcoin expert just passed. And then they can't figure out how the hell to do all of this weird Bitcoin thing that you kept telling them at the dinner table, and they weren't interested then, and they were really bored and confused by it all. And now they're kicking themselves. So they're going to... what are they going to do? I mean, they don't have a Bitcoin expert. Oh, right, I know. They're going to go on Twitter and Reddit and ask for help. And some very helpful person is going to, they're going to take all of their money. And probably all of your money that you locked in a smart way from a UTXO by persuading them to give over the keys. That's if they haven't lost the keys already. The bottom line is... inheritance is a problem that has to do with people, and it's not about the technical means that you transfer the Bitcoin. And because it's a problem that has to do with people, and people at their very worst, they're most vulnerable, they're most hurt, they're most distressed, who are looking for answers and have just lost someone, that's the worst time to try to give them a technical puzzle to solve. So to solve the inheritance problem, you have to think about the person side, you have to think about the legal side, you have to think about the technical side. I'm not an expert in this, but fortunately I do know an expert. In fact, I know the world's foremost and perhaps only expert in this, Pamela Morgan. And apart from the book, Crypto Asset Inheritance Planning, that Pamela has written, we collaborated recently and produced a workshop called Inheritance Planning, which is available on my website, antonop.com. This workshop is currently under testing. So right now it's only available to my patrons who... basically, they get a discount for being guinea pigs and figuring out if it's good and how we can make it even better. So far, we've gotten great feedback. And it's going to be released to the public soon. And by soon, I mean probably before the end of August, perhaps in the next week or two. And that kind of walks you through how to think about this problem and how to think about more broadly than just kind of a whiz-bang, dead man switch technical problem, which is usually the way you shouldn't think about this problem. Great question, though. Let me jump back in the chat, see how things are going, and see if everybody's behaving themselves, or if the people who are misbehaving themselves are at least doing so with creative emojis. Feel free to do a creative emoji misbehavior blast and show us. Very good. Let's go to the next question. I hope you're all having fun. Are the user names of community builders just getting silly now? Asks the super duper booper scooper. And the answer is yes. Not only are the usernames of community builders just getting silly, I can demonstrate this by actually reading you some of them. So this is a good opportunity for me to tell you about our community builders. So we use the term community builders to talk about the people who help me and my team succeed on this educational mission about Bitcoin, about open blockchains in general, about the social implications, economic, philosophical, historical implications of this technology. And I couldn't do this without all of you. So I'd like to say thanks. And every month on the live stream, or almost every month, we do a quick thank you where I say by name thank you. Now, name is not really always the case. Some people give their names, and some people give us some ridiculous opt-in silliness. So let's see what we got this month. So thank you very much for your support. Alexander Tsukias, Anita Posh, Bitcoin Yubi, Brooklyn Frank, Carlos M, Christos Michalakis, Community Motive, Corey Phillips, Crypto Karen, David Hardage, Davide Patti, Demosthenes, Dr. Mauricio Corona, Eccentric Biped, Edu Sequeira, Eduardo Cavero, Enrico, Eric SF, FD, Frank M, Giovanni, Hodalon, Inbar, Jeff Shen, JKP, Lillian87, Lissandro, Lucia, aka Dancing Crypto, Magic Mike Coffee, Make Void, Manuel Dueñas, Matthew McClintock, Miguel Clages, Natosho Sakamoto, Niraj Badaya, Outback Trader, Outlier Canada, Pepe, Plebnet, Raphael Cislak, Relax Vibe, Richard Taylor, Seraph84, Simon Pressler, The Super Duper Booper Scooper, T. Buddyman, Whackpack, Yakov Borinsky, Yes to Crypto, Zephyr, Oskavlak, and Zakas. You may actually have recognized some of those names because they asked some great questions. And as always, thank you for your support. Thank you for the great questions. Thank you for the funny names. And thank you again for joining me today. So that was the last question. Oh, we haven't changed it yet. Let's see what else we can move on to. Oh boy, here we go again. We've got to put a limit on the long questions, or a font size limit. Okay, the next question comes from Tim Draper. Really? Okay, well, if it is you, Tim, hello. What are some things to look forward to when block 709632 is mined? Well, you know, when I see block 709632 being mined, you know what I really look forward to? I really look forward to block 709633. I've heard it comes around 10 minutes later. But what Tim is talking about here is the activation of a new feature, a soft fork feature that was locked in about a month and a half ago and will be turned on the production network on block 709632, and that feature is called Taproot. So what projects can be built on top of Taproot? What can be done in the meantime? Will that block be Bitcoin's 1995 moment? Any good news for non-techs would be great. Tim, I would say that not much is going to happen on block 709632, and I don't think anybody is really going to notice when that block passes. Why is that? We're talking about a protocol change, a way in which the scripting system, the signature system, and some of the privacy characteristics of how Bitcoin scripts are encoded in transactions are changed. So until now, Bitcoin has a signature system called the elliptic curve, a digital signature algorithm, which is helpfully named ECDSA, in case elliptic curve digital signature algorithm didn't explain it sufficiently for you. And that's not going away, but we're going to have a new signature system called Schnorr signatures. And before you start falling asleep on me, Schnorr signatures is not actually, like the name might suggest, boring. It's the name of the inventor, and Schnorr signatures are a mechanism for signatures that will make Bitcoin a bit more efficient, will open the door for some very neat tricks, and will increase privacy a bit. Together with Schnorr, there's two other capabilities called TapScript and Taproot, and the whole package, Taproot, TapScript, and Schnorr, together are just called the Taproot upgrade, to keep things simple. Taproot is a neat little trick that allows you to make complex Bitcoin scripts appear as a simple single signature payment. What do I mean by that? What's a complex Bitcoin script? Let's think of a multi-signature script. Right now, about a quarter of all Bitcoin transactions contain some kind of multi-signature script. And you can see those on the blockchain. And not only can you see them, but you can see how many signers there are and various other characteristics about these multi-signature scripts. And obviously that reveals quite a bit of information. You can do a lot of statistical analysis and correlation because these are not the usual single signature payments. They're just these strange things that mean that someone's using Bitcoin in a slightly more unusual way. If you see one of these multi-signature scripts and it looks like a 2 of 2 multi-signature script, almost always that means it's a Lightning Network channel closure transaction. So you can identify those and you can see the balances that were closed on that channel. And that's not great for privacy. It provides the ability to do some statistical analysis. So Taproot takes all of these types of complex scripts and makes them look as if they're a single pair script, single signature, single pair script. And that's great for privacy because not only does it make those weird scripts appear more like all of the other scripts, but as people upgrade their wallets to do Taproot transaction, every transaction script will look like one of these, or most of them will. And that means you get to be in a much bigger set that's much more difficult to analyze with statistics. Now, of course, just because these features are available doesn't mean the wallets are going to start using them immediately. Just like with SegWit, when SegWit was launched, it was available August 2017, and still, even today, many wallets do not use SegWit even though it's available and can save people fees. So if your Bitcoin address on your wallet starts with a 1, you're using the oldest type of address. If it starts with a 3, you might be using a SegWit address, but not the newest type of SegWit address. And if it starts with a BC1, then you're using the latest and greatest version. So you can tell already that even 4 years after SegWit was introduced, I bet many people here in the chat do not have a BC1 address on their wallet, in which case they should perhaps consider upgrading or changing their wallets so that it supports what's called native SegWit, so they can save some fees. So wallets need to adopt this. The Lightning Network needs to use this to become a bit more efficient and a bit more private. And any other application that can use these features or that uses complex scripts needs to change the way it works in order to take advantage of this new capability, and that won't happen overnight. In fact, one of the reasons for the difference in time between the lock-in of this capability about a month and a half ago and the actual activation of this when these things become secure on the network at block 709632, which we're estimating is going to be in November, that time, that difference in time, is to give developers time to write code, to test code, and to get everything ready for their applications to support Taproot. And of course, those developers who are doing the hard work to keep everything maintained and are releasing the latest and greatest features in their products will do this work. Some won't do it as fast. So if you can ask the people who make the wallets that you like the most, ask them, will you have Taproot available when it launches in your wallet? The actual payment type is going to be called P2TR, which means pay to Taproot. And ask them if they will support Taproot or pay to Taproot by block 709632 and see what they say. And as for whether it's going to be Bitcoin's 1995 moment, I don't know. I remember the internet's 1995 moment, the AOL moment, as people call it. That's the moment that AOL dumped about 2 million of its customers onto the internet, and everyone called it the golden time of the internet, and everybody who was on the internet before the AOL moment called it Black Monday, because a whole bunch of idiot noobs were dumped on the internet. But hey, sometimes I wonder if trying to mainstream these technologies too fast is a bit of a double-edged sword. Absolutely, we want as many people as possible to use this technology, but sometimes that comes with too much change too fast. All right, I think we've got time for like maybe 2 or 3 questions, and I'm going to check in the chat room and see how things are going. Oh, I love the question from Yes to Crypto. What is a 1995 moment? Yeah, it's funny because not only was I old enough to remember that, but I was old enough to actually be on the internet and in university at the time. In fact, I already had my master's degree then. Whoa. Oh dear. And it still feels that was a decade ago. The 90s feel like they were last decade. It's really, really hard to remember that was 25 years ago. Also really depressing to remember that was 25 years ago. All right, the next question we have comes from Zekas again. Some good questions today. In an old Q&A podcast, you mentioned a tool to explore the most usual derivation paths of a given seed looking for UTXO. I was never able to find it again. What was it? Zekas, this is a great question. Let me first explain what Zekas is asking about. So if you have a seed, and a seed is a mnemonic seed, or mnemonic phrase as it's known, is the 12 to 24 words that you use to back up your wallet. And that produces billions of keys and addresses in your wallet, but it produces them in a tree structure, and that tree structure has multiple different paths where the keys might be located. And one of the things that happens sometimes is a wallet might use a non-standard path, or your old wallet might have used a different path than the new wallet where you're trying to import that seed, and you import it and it says 0 found, and then you freak out because you're like, where's my money? Your money's still there. It's just that your wallet is very, very focused on looking on the wrong branch of the tree and not noticing the 2 branches over all of your money's hanging from where the old wallet put it. And so that branch is called the derivation path. And when you import a seed, it can't look at all the branches because there's billions of them. And it has to pick some of the more standard ones to look for your money. So there's a little tool that was developed over the last year and a half, I guess. I guess it was about a year ago that we saw that developed. I sponsored that development, and it was done as a grant, a Gitcoin grant, and it was incorporated into a popular desktop wallet that I quite like called Electrum. Electrum is a desktop wallet for Windows and Linux and Mac, and it works with hardware wallets, but you can also import seeds directly into it in software, which, by the way, you have to be very careful with because you're putting your seed into an online system. So it has a tool where if you put in a 12 or 24 word seed, in the next question, it will ask you what is the derivation path. And now there's a new button below that says scan for the most common derivation paths. And so you can use that to scan, and it will look at about a dozen or so most common derivation paths. So if previously you have tried and failed to import a seed or find the money from importing a seed, and you need a tool like this, the Electrum desktop wallet can do that, and you can find that on electrum.org. And be careful, because there are sites that are pretending to be the Electrum wallet and are not. So don't do a Google search. Go to electrum.org and download it from there, and you can import a test seed and see that process. Philip asks, broadly speaking, what might be the significance of the crypto bill before Congress for Bitcoin and for crypto in general? So, I haven't read the details. I've read a lot of scary articles. I haven't even read a lot of those. I've glanced at a bunch of scary articles. I generally don't pay attention to what the regulators and legislators are doing, especially not before they've actually done it, and before we actually see how that's going to play out. For one thing, because I don't think any of these people are going to be responding to lobbying by their own constituents, or rather, they will, but their constituents are not who you think they are. So they will respond to lobbying by their real constituents: Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan Chase, Bank of America, Boeing, General Dynamics, bombs and banks, but not us. So until they've written whatever shit they're putting into this bill and made up some rules, I don't really pay much attention to it, because a lot can change in the last moment, and they don't even read their own bills. So we'll find out afterwards. They'll find out after they voted what they actually voted for, and so will we. I've heard that some parts of it were not particularly crypto friendly, and then some amendments were put in that were a bit more crypto friendly, and they keep threatening all of these regulations to track and do various things to crypto. Ultimately, the bottom line is this: if you control your own keys and you run open source software, they really can't force you to do anything. They might make it more difficult for you to use exchanges in the US if you're a US citizen. And that won't stop criminals, but it will make it harder for the middle class. And that may have an impact on the price, I guess. Not that you should really care about that too much. They can't force you to change which wallet you use, and they also can't effectively force the software developers to write regulations into software wallets. All they can do is force centralized businesses, like the exchanges, to adopt more and more complex regulations for the movement of cryptocurrency. And the primary goal there, of course, is not to catch criminals, but it's to reduce competition for banks in the excuse of catching criminals. They work at the banks. But yeah, don't tell them that. As for crypto in general, crypto for the world, Bitcoin for the world, it won't make any difference whatsoever. Don't forget that they regulate at the speed of the pen, and this system is a global system of decentralized innovation that operates at the speed of light and that has much, much more fun, interesting, and creative people inventing new ways to make that regulation ridiculously obsolete before the ink dries on the piece of paper that they wrote it on. So this is a long competition, and it's a competition in which decentralized innovation will continuously outpace, simply through speed and flexibility, their ability to regulate. They're regulating what they think Bitcoin was 3 years ago. And in the meantime, that's changing. Do you think any of those regulators are thinking about, I don't know, Taproot or the Lightning Network or any of the other technologies being developed in any of the blockchains and surrounding ecosystem and industry that has emerged over the last 12 years? No, they're not. They can't. They'll never catch up. All right, I think that might have been the last. Oh, no, we have a last question. Oh, yes. My producer is waving a sandwich at me as a bribe to answer one more question. So this better be a good sandwich and a good question. All right. Oops, it's a long one again. I have to keep adjusting the font. I apologize. There we go. Anonymous asks, could you explain how the price of Bitcoin is determined? Is that based on available coins on exchanges? Supply and demand. Since there is no central exchange, how's the price tracked all the time and mostly equal on most exchanges? It's a great question, Anonymous. I actually have a free workshop that explains this and so much more. On antonop.com, you can find it. It's called The Introduction to Bitcoin and Open Blockchains, and you can learn the answer to this question, but I'll give you a quick preview. So the price of Bitcoin, or rather the exchange rate or value of Bitcoin in terms of USD or some other currency pair, is determined on each exchange separately by the supply and demand. So the price at which you buy a Bitcoin is the price at which somebody else is willing to sell a Bitcoin. And if you average all of the orders that are filled within a period of time, you'll get an average price or a most recent price that will update on the exchange. So if you see that, Bitcoin is currently worth, I don't know, what is it today, $150? That means that over the past minute or so, someone sold or bought a Bitcoin for $150. I can hear gasps from the audience when they're like, is this a recorded session? What is he talking about? It's not $150. I'm just kidding with you. But, you know, honestly, if someone was willing to buy and sell a Bitcoin for $150 very, very, very briefly, that would be the price on that exchange for that instant. It would very quickly bounce back to a regular, more normal price. And when that happens, by the way, that's called a flash crash. So how is the price tracked across multiple exchanges? Well, the price is aggregated by price trackers, so various websites and services. I know there are a number of popular ones. CoinMarketCap is one, coinmarketcap.com that people sometimes use. Coincap.io, which I like, is one also. And what they do is they basically track a whole bunch of different currency pairs on a whole bunch of different exchanges. And then they do what's called a volume-weighted average price. And a volume-weighted average is basically taking the average price and multiplying it by the volume of transactions in Bitcoin, for example, over the period of time, and then calculating that. So that if an exchange is doing a lot of volume, then it contributes a bigger component to the average price that the price aggregator is reporting. There's also one kind of more official, if you like, in the traditional finance sense, price service, which is run by the Chicago Mercantile Exchange, and that's the Bitcoin reference rate, and they also have one for Ethereum. And disclosure there, I'm on the oversight board that ensures that the reference rate that is computed by the Chicago Mercantile Exchange is based on a set of good criteria, and that those criteria are being followed for what exchanges to include or not. And that is used in more traditional finance settings to have kind of the price of the day of Bitcoin. Like if you wanted to report on your taxes what price Bitcoin had on a specific day, you know, that would be a good source, because then you could say, look, this is where I got it. And then the final question is, how come the price is mostly equal in most exchanges? Well, the answer to that is not about tracking or coordination, but about a market effect that arises from a process called arbitrage. Arbitrage, A-R-B-I-T-R-A-G-E, arbitrage, is basically when someone will see a difference in price in one exchange versus another and take advantage of that to make some profit. Let's say, for example, that right now a Bitcoin is worth or is priced at $45,000 on Coinbase, and it's priced $40,000 on, I don't know, Kraken. Great. So I see a great opportunity here. If I go on Kraken and I buy myself one of these amazing $40,000 Bitcoins, and then I withdraw it, and then I deposit it on Coinbase, I can then sell it for $45,000, and I've just made $5,000 worth of profit. And if I'm smart, I'm going to keep doing that, right? So I'm going to keep buying these $40,000 Bitcoins and selling them for 45 on another exchange. Well, as I do that, there is one complexity, of course, which is not only do I have to move Bitcoin from one exchange to the other, but I also then have to move dollars in the opposite direction or whatever other currency I'm using, so that I can keep playing this trade. Because obviously I would run out of money pretty quickly. Even if I'm making a profit, the money would be there. It would just be on the wrong exchange for what I'm trying to do. Now, think about this for a second. You'll notice that if I keep buying these $40,000 Bitcoin, what I'm doing is I'm pushing that price up. because I'm creating demands for these, the price will go up. So next time I go back to buy one, it's probably 41 instead of 40. And if I keep selling them at 45 on the other exchange, well, I'm creating a supply, which means I'm pushing the price down there. So next time I go to sell it, it's now 44. So now my spread is 41, 44. So the very action of me profiting from this difference in price has reduced it. If I keep doing this again and again and again, and if thousands of other people keep doing this again and again and again, as you can imagine, before long, the difference in price is going to keep shrinking and shrinking until it vanishes. And so when you see a difference in price in exchanges, it's either very, very small, or it's caused by an imbalance in flows, which is basically means that there is an arbitrage opportunity, but no one can use it because they can't get dollars in or Bitcoin out, or something else is happening that's delaying that cycle. And that delay is being represented by a spread. So that's a quick answer on arbitrage, price discovery, and the movement of funds from exchange to exchange. So I hope that was useful. And by the way, that's how stock markets work. That's how... Oh, I got a new question. Very good. All right, let's go to the next question. ¿Qué pasó? ¿Qué es esto? Yo no hablo español. No puedo. ¿Es una prueba de español? Oh. Ok. Una pregunta de Miguel Clayes. ¿Tiene Bitcoin valor intrínseco? ¿Por qué? Entonces, Miguel, no. Bitcoin no tiene valor intrínseco. Yo pienso que nada tiene valor intrínseco. Valor no es intrínseco. Bitcoin tiene valor de uso. Yeah, I think that's about as far as I can go with my Spanish. Oh dear, that was a bit embarrassing, and it was a bad surprise. You know, I thought I was getting a sandwich for answering one more question, and instead what I got was a question in Spanish. And I'm going to have to fire my producer now, which is going to be unpleasant. So the question from Miguel was, does Bitcoin have intrinsic value? And if so, why? And the answer was, it does not have intrinsic value, or at least I think that's what I said in Spanish. I may have said something completely different, perhaps even offensive. Bitcoin doesn't have intrinsic value because intrinsic value doesn't exist. Nothing has intrinsic value. All value is based on use and context. Intrinsic is a word that is often abused. In economics, the word intrinsic means something very specific. That what it means is intrinsic, from the Latin, means from within itself, meaning that absent any context and without any external reference, something has value. But the truth is, value is a subjective thing, and value only arises when you see something within context. And so a glass of water in the Sahara has a lot of value, but that value isn't intrinsic because that same glass of water, next to a glacial spring has zero value, and the water didn't change. So if the value changed but the water didn't change, that means the value wasn't intrinsic. It wasn't within or from within the value. It was based on the context that changed, the scarcity in this particular case. But other things also affect value, because you can have something that's scarce that no one values because it's not useful. So that's also the case. So I don't think anything else has intrinsic value. All right, that concludes our live stream. And if you have a chance, do an emoji storm. I'd like everybody to see that we have some really nice custom emojis. And you're thinking, custom emojis, what's a custom emoji? Well, those who are members of the YouTube channel, if you have a YouTube membership, which I believe is something like $2 a month or something like that, you get to use one of our little custom emojis. And the funny thing is, we started with 6 or 4 or something like that. But as we have more and more subscribers, we can add more emojis. So now we have, lots of them. And they're all very, very silly. And but at the same time, fun. So I hope you have fun with some of these emojis. We even have a cat with laser eyes now, which I didn't even know we had, for the latest Bitcoin memes. Oh my sandwich emoji, and all of that just happened. So thank you so much for joining me today. Our next event is a live premiere on August 15. I'm really excited about that because what we're going to be showing you during this live premiere is not a very long video, and one you may have seen before. It's part of our remastering series. And in remastering, what we do is we take an older talk, preferably one that was actually good, but perhaps overlooked and not really appreciated at the time. And I like it, so that's what you get. As benevolent dictator, I get to pick one. And then perhaps also a video that has very poor quality of video or very poor quality of audio, but a good message. And it's a pity that it hasn't been watched by more people. And what we do is we remaster that video. We add animations and pop-ups and silly graphics to make it more engaging, to make it easier to watch, and hopefully to give it new life. So August 15th, we're doing the live premiere of a remastered video. If you're a patron, you've already previewed this, and it will be released. Apparently, this one has me wearing a hat, a chef hat. And I don't know why, but there you go. August 29th, we're going to have our next live stream Q&A. Unlike the increasingly inaccurately known July live stream Q&A that you just watched, the August 29th Q&A will be in August. Shocking. And by the way, for those of you who may be wondering, why am I using such a weird name like the increasingly inaccurately named July live stream, that's a bit of a callback, a hat tip to one of my favorite authors and one of my favorite books or book series, which is The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy by Douglas Adams. I was very lucky in my life to meet him a few years before he passed, and he was amazing. Douglas Adams wrote The Hitchhiker Guide to the Galaxy, which is a trilogy with 4 books. And the 4th book in the trilogy is called The Increasingly Inaccurately Named Trilogy of The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. I love that, so I did a little hint there. Thank you for joining. If you enjoyed this, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you next Sunday for our remastering.